Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jen Wolf. That is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. This right here, Nick Wright. We start today's show on a serious note. The news of Antonio Brown. As first reported by the New York Times, Patriots wide receiver Antonio Brown has been accused of rape by a former trainer. In a lawsuit filed yesterday, the trainer says she was sexually assaulted by Brown on 3 separate occasions between 2017 and 2018. Antonio Brown has denied the allegations. The Patriots released a statement saying that the team is aware of said allegations. So we will leave it there and make the tough transition back onto the football field. Among the other news of the day, the Steelers and Mike Tomlin are off to a...
We're going to get to the Steelers and Mike Tomlin in a moment, but we're going to talk about that, I believe, for a moment here.
Sure.
And all right, I just want the audience to know this. People can read the lawsuit on their own if they'd like to. You can read it in the New York Times. I read it last night. There's some really gross text messages that Antonio, unless the woman has forged them, that Antonio sent to this woman. Along with 3 separate allegations of various forms of sexual misconduct ramping up to forcible rape. Antonio Brown in the last 18 months has been accused of throwing furniture off a balcony, almost hitting a child. He then, in response to that, said the people are just out for money. He's been accused of hitting a different woman. His response to that was, that woman is just out for money. He has now been accused of this. His response was, this woman is just out for money. I obviously do not know. No one can know who is telling the truth in this instance, but the allegations are really, really horrifying. And I would say to people, read the lawsuit. You can also read Antonio's response. He's going to countersue Chris. And he says this is an extortion scheme about $1.5 million business investment with basically a scorned former intimate partner. And so those are the facts on the ground. And I don't know otherwise, other than what people can see on their own, what they want to take from it. But that's the timeline of this, and those are the facts on this.
Yeah, I'm going to wait to hear more information on it. I believe that AB, just like she deserves the right to be able to bring these allegations, he deserves the right to have his side of it heard. We haven't heard that besides him denying it. So I'm just going to allow due process to take place, analyze the things on the field until we get some new information.
And it appears the Patriots are going to do the same. No word yet on whether Antonio Brown plays or not this week in week 2.
And they just momentarily ago released a statement saying basically the NFL is going to investigate, they're going to investigate, they're not going to have any further comment until those investigations are complete.
All right. Now we'll leave it there and make the transition back onto the football field. Among the other news of the day, the Steelers and Mike Tomlin off to a rough start this season. They were handed a 30-point loss by Tom Brady and the Patriots Sunday night. This week, they host Seattle. They're 4.5-point favorites, according to Fox Bet. Tomlin, after a pretty dramatic wake-up call to start this season, hopes his team will rebound.
We're 0-1. And we better be scalded because of that, and we better work our tails off as we prepare for our next opportunity, man. There will be no division in this group. This is how we're wired. This is what we put out there. We're foaming at the mouth for our next opportunity. We better be.
Look, if the Steelers are going to come back, it's going to be a big turnaround after the drubbing they took at the hands of the Patriots. See, do you think they do that? Think the Steelers rebound from their week 1 loss?
Yeah, I think they can rebound, but the thing about it is this is not just a normal loss. When you lose to an opposition like New England, a team that typically in your drafting, not only are you getting ready for teams like Cleveland, teams like Baltimore, but Pittsburgh, man, they have playoff aspirations every year. So part of their preparation is, what if we face New England? And when the NFL schedule comes out months in advance, as a team, you start preparing for that first game at least a little bit every week. You'll take a section out of practice in your OTAs and say, you know something? We're going to do just a mini section on New England and what they do. So they've been working on this for months. Even though the coaches, they're going to lie. They're going to be like, oh, no, it was just a regular. This is New England opening up the 100th season versus Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. You know that they had an extensive game plan. You know when they took the field, they had a lot of confidence. And none of that showed. So now with this young team, that Big Ben is one of the few players there that's had some type of playoff success. It's a bunch of young guys playing on a team that traditionally has been very good. So how do they respond? I told you guys, I'm worried about their wide receivers because I'm worried about not only did they lose their wide receiver coach suddenly in training camp, and they hired a good friend of mine, Ray Sherman, to be able to take over, but Juju Smith-Schuster is their leading receiver. He's 22 years old. I don't know of a 22-year-old that I would allow to lead my wide receiving room. And that's a tremendous responsibility, let alone that now he's going to get all that coverage that AB was getting. And
that
AB,
was my concern.
AB, man, when you are a top-flight wide receiver, either you are getting double-teamed or they're putting their best guy with help on you. Now Juju Smith-Schuster, he's going to face that, and it is a different world when you're a number one and you don't have other number one to take that heat off of you. So I'm concerned about the receiving corps moving forward.
When you mentioned that you prepare for your week one opponent at least a little bit throughout your offseason, throughout training camp, throughout preseason, I think it's a really important point because while Coach Mangini might not like the fact that I can chart out who teams are playing in week 7 the moment the schedule comes out, everyone knows who they're playing in week 1. Particularly when it's been the team that's the reason that, and this is why the Steelers have made it to 3 Super Bowls in the last 15 years, but the reason they haven't been to 5, 6, 7 has been because they cannot get through New England. They cannot win in that building. They have incredible trouble beating Tom Brady, particularly in the highest leverage spots.
Same way that the Colts used to struggle with New England. Now let's just imagine Peyton Manning, Tom Brady playing the first game of the season, and Tom beats him by 30 points. Oh, what would we be saying about their coaching staff?
Absolutely. And if the offense is totally impotent the entire time. I believe this season shapes up to be the toughest ask of Ben Roethlisberger's career. When he first got to Pittsburgh, he had great defenses. He was not asked to be a guy to throw for 4,500, much less 5,000 yards. Once he became a future Hall of Fame quarterback, he every year had a top flight wide receiver and most years had a very good running back to go along with it. This year, I do not believe they have a dominant defense. I do not believe they have an elite number 1 receiver, even if Juju can turn into that. And right now, James Conner, Jenna, as you and I have talked about, does not look like the upper echelon running back he looked like the first half of last season. So Big Ben, without an elite defense, without a dominant number 1 receiver, with questions at running game, it all falls on his very broad shoulders. That's a hell of an ask for a quarterback in year 16.
But who asked that? Big Ben was partly responsible for asking for some of that. He wanted his team back. There was always skirmishes between him and everyone else, and that's what he really wanted. Deion Sanders said something really interesting yesterday. He said, after watching the game, I didn't see any fire in Ben Roethlisberger's belly. I didn't see a guy that wanted to go out there and finish plays and get his team back in it. And I wonder how much of this is on Ben Roethlisberger to rally this team. You saw Tomlin got up there and say, hey, this is on me. I didn't prepare ourselves, good enough to prepare ourselves for the Patriots. What do you want to see from Ben Roethlisberger?
Well, this is the thing. If we were to sit down and talk to Ben, and Ben was to tell us the truth of the matter would be that Ben had nothing to do with L. Bell not being there.
Nope.
Had nothing to do with L. Bell not being paid. Now, he had nothing to do with Antonio Brown not showing up to work and forcing the Pittsburgh Steelers to trade him. Even though you can say, oh, man, he said a couple of things. That doesn't stop a man from coming to work. And now, since then, we've seen with AB's behavior, no, Ben didn't force that. That was going to be his move anyway because he didn't have any guaranteed money. The thing about it, when you're on the road, and I understand prime time. Prime time is an emotional energy guy. So a lot of times when guys like him, when they give advice, it's based on how they played the game. When you go on the road, it's hard to play with a lot of energy because you have to be focused. And when you have a lot of young players, if I'm playing with a lot of energy and I'm on the sideline, you know what guys say? Man, why is Ben yelling at people? So now it's hard to be a winner in Ben's, because it's Ben trying to be, as they said, he's the only adult in the room. Sometimes you have to take the approach, I'm going to be focused today. I'm not going to be a cheerleader. And that's what the game is about on that day. So I don't have a problem with how he played on Sunday emotionally, but I have a problem with how he played technically. Like, they did not attack this defense the way I expect. Offensive line didn't help him out getting off to a good start running the ball. Pittsburgh's defense didn't help them out by getting short stops, giving them a short field, and/or turning the ball over. So I'm okay with Ben. Right now, I'm going to watch Ben this year, and I'm going to be careful I don't overreact to try to put too much burden on Ben. And Ben's got a tough gig. When you lose L. Bell and you lose A.B., what quarterback have we seen in this era that has lost that type of firepower?
And the roster, whether you're going to put a big burden on him or not, the construct of the roster does put an enormous burden on him because he is far and away the most accomplished and I think the best player on the roster.
I can understand. I'm putting responsibility on Ben to play the type of quarterback, but I'm not going to judge Ben on the way the rest of the team does.
Sure, and
if that defense gives up 30 points, I don't care what Ben is doing.
And I agree with you that when it comes to Le'Veon Bell in particular, I don't think Ben or anyone on the roster had really anything to do with that. That was between Le'Veon Bell, Kevin Colbert, and how the Steelers wanted to pay running backs. One last person, though, that can help Ben Roethlisberger, and that's Mike Tomlin in this regard. I do not think the Steelers are positioned to have another top 5 offense. And if they're not, that has to adjust how Tomlin goes into things like 4th and goal from the 1, down 20 points in the 3rd quarter. Maybe in years past, take the 3 points. You feel like we're going to be able to drive up and down the field later. This year, you're going to have to be more aggressive in situations like that because points are going to be harder to come by.
And Mike Tomlin said no matter what, there's no division in this line.